Ever get that feeling like there's a whole lot more going on under the surface? Like something secretly driving our choices?
It's almost like there's this hidden language we're trying to understand, the language of our subconscious.
Well, get ready to decode, because today we're diving into the world of Freudian drive theory.
And we're going beyond just the theory. We're going to see it play out in front of us.
Exactly. We're using Teresa Deletus's Freud's Drive, psychoanalysis, literature, and film as our guide. But don't worry, this isn't some dry academic slog.
No, we're going to be looking at how these concepts come to life in movies and books.
Exactly. We're talking David Cronenberg's Existence Z, even Juna Barnes' novel, Nightwood.
It's about recognizing those concepts playing out in our everyday lives, you know?
So, no dusty old theories here. We're talking about real life, and to understand it, we got to start with Freud's idea of drive.
Which a lot of people confuse with instinct, but they're not the same thing at all.
Yeah, what is the difference? I feel like I should know this, but...
Think of instinct as that programmed, predictable behavior, a bird building a nest, you know. But drive,
That's more our internal energy pushing us towards something.
you got it. And what's fascinating is the object of that drive isn't fixed. It's influenced by our experiences, our environment.
So we're not just robots running a program. There's room for,
Hmm.
I don't know, change, I guess.
Exactly, it's flexible. And that's where things get really interesting, because that's where Freud's death drive comes in.
Okay, death drive. Not exactly the cheeriest term.
I know, right? It definitely sounds a bit ominous.
Yeah, when I hear death drive, I'm not picturing rainbows and sunshine. So what is it really?
Well, it's definitely one of Freud's most misunderstood and debated ideas, but it's not about a desire to actually die.
Okay, good, because that's a little dark, even for this deep dive.
It's more about this inherent urge in all living things to return to a more, how do I put it, a simpler, more inorganic state.
So not death, but like pre-life, before we were all complex beings.
In a way, yes. Before we were born, we were just
Got it.
elements.
Yeah, right, right.
So the death drive, it's kind of like this pullback to that. Not consciously, of course. It's happening on a much deeper level.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But this return to an inorganic state,
Mm.
that doesn't sound so great.
And it's not always a bad thing either. Think about David Cronenberg's Existence Z, for example.
Okay, Cronenberg, now we're talking.
It's a wild, wild film. Virtual reality, bioports.
Bioports, those fleshy things that plug people into the virtual world.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cronenberg does not shy away from the
Oh,
unsettling.
and it makes you think.
Oh, definitely. How does Existence Z tie back to this whole death drive thing?
Well, think about it. The boundaries between reality and the virtual world in the film, they're totally blurred.
And that's the death drive in action.
You could see it that way, yeah. This yearning to transcend the limitations of our physical bodies, to merge with technology.
It's like in our real lives, how obsessed we are with our phones and devices, always connected.
Exactly. That desire to lose ourselves in technology, to connect on this deeper level, maybe it is a manifestation of that pull towards an inorganic state.
Makes you wonder where it all leads, you know?
It does. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Because this whole death drive thing, it's not just about escapism. It also has this weird connection to economics.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. Freud, Cronenberg, and now dot economics. I need another minute to wrap my head around that one. We need a bigger deep dive. All right, Freud, Cronenberg, and now we're adding economics to the mix. This is where I need you to walk me through it.
Okay, so you know how we were talking about the death drive being this force of both creation and destruction?
Yeah, like two sides of the same coin.
Right. Well, the economist Joseph Schumpeter, he had this whole theory about capitalism he called creative destruction. And it actually lines up with Freud's thinking in a really surprising way.
Okay, I'm listening, but how do Freud and economics even go together?
So Schumpeter, he said that capitalism is all about evolution. It's constantly changing and adapting.
Makes sense. Things are always in motion.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Evolution isn't always pretty. Sometimes it means that old technologies, old industries, even old ideas, they get swept away by new ones.
Out with the old, in with the new, right?
Exactly. And it can be brutal. Think about streaming services.
Oh, for sure. Netflix, Hulu, all that totally changed how we watch stuff.
Exactly. When's the last time you used a DVD player?
It's been a minute.
See, that's creative destruction in action. The old way of doing things gets destroyed to make way for the new.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does that connect back to the death drive?
So the death drive, with its whole thing about wanting to return to a simpler state. You could think of it as the force that kind of dismantles those old structures. It clears the way for something new.
So even though it sounds kind of negative, the death drive is also pushing us forward.
Yeah, it's this weird paradox, right? Both the death drive and creative destruction, they're all about this cycle of breaking down and building up, and it's everywhere. New phones, new ideas, even new ways of thinking. It can be kind of exciting when you think about it.
Okay, that is pretty mind-blowing. So Freud's death drive is like this mirror for this economic theory about innovation.
Mhm.
But what about Cronenberg? We were talking about existence and how he uses those bioports to like blend the real and the virtual. How does that fit in with creative destruction?
Remember how freaky those bioports are? They really get under your skin, both literally and figuratively.
Totally. You're plugged into this whole other reality.
Exactly, and that's what creative destruction can feel like sometimes. It's new and exciting, but also a little bit scary because you're not really sure what's going to happen.
And Cronenberg is a master of making you feel that unease. Like maybe this technology, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
And that's what makes his films so thought-provoking. He forces us to ask those tough questions about what's real, what it means to be human, in a world where technology is evolving faster than we can keep up.
It's like he's tapping into our primal fear of the unknown.
Exactly. And that fear, it's not always a bad thing. It can be a powerful motivator for change, for growth, for pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But we were talking about pushing boundaries, and Gina Barnes does that in a completely different way in Nightwood. It's a totally different vibe than Cronenberg, but it's grappling with these same Freudian concepts in a really powerful way. You mentioned this odor of memory earlier. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, it's an image that really stuck with me.
It's such a powerful way of thinking about memories, about how they stay with us. It's like those past experiences, those traumas, those desires. They're not just events that happened in the past. They linger, you know? You can practically smell them.
Okay, that's a little creepy, but I get what you're saying. It's like those scents that bring back a rush of memories.
Exactly. And that's what makes Barnes such a master of language. She can make those abstract, intangible feelings feel real, present, almost overwhelming.
Yeah, she doesn't shy away from the dark stuff.
No, she doesn't. But that's what makes Nightwood so incredible. She dives headfirst into the messy, complicated nature of desire.
It's definitely not your typical beach read.
Definitely not. But it will stay with you long after you finish it, I can tell you that.
You know, it's funny how we tend to put Freud in this box, Like, oh, Freud, psychoanalysis therapy.
Right. But he was grappling with such huge universal themes.
Exactly. And Deletus, she really brings that out, like with this idea of death at work.
Ah, yes. Death at work. We've been circling around it this whole time.
We have. So what does Deletus mean by that, and how does it connect everything we've been talking about?
It's not about, like, literally dying, it's more about dot transformation, this constant process of things breaking down and new things coming up in their place. It's happening all the time, everywhere.
It's that cycle of creation and destruction again. That creative destruction we were talking about with Schumpeter, but playing out in our own lives.
You got it. And when we think about the death drive, it's that same idea, right? Not wanting to die, but this urge to return to something simpler. A shedding of the complexities of life as we know it.
Which, okay, I get it. That can be a little scary to think about, but you're saying there's another way to look at it.
It's about accepting that change is inevitable. It's about letting go of the old to make space for the new.
So it's not about giving up, but about making room for something different to emerge.
Exactly. And we see that playing out in both Existence Z and Nightwood, each in their own way.
So with Existence Z, how does this idea of death at work play out in this world of bioports and virtual reality?
Well, think about how unsettling those bioports are. They literally plug you into a different reality. The lines between what's real and what's virtual, they start to dissolve.
It's like Cronenberg is saying that the way we define reality is changing right before our eyes.
And that can be both exhilarating and terrifying, right? It's the death of our old way of seeing things, but it's also the birth of something new.
And in Nightwood, we're not dealing with virtual reality, but those same themes are there.
Definitely. Think about that odor of memory we were talking about, how past experiences, traumas, even desires, they linger like a scent. They become a part of us.
It's like even when we try to bury those parts of ourselves, they still have power over us.
And sometimes we need to confront those buried parts of ourselves, even if it's painful. And that's what Barnes does so well in Nightwood. Her characters, they're forced to confront the death of their old selves, their old ways of seeing the world. in order to grow.
It's interesting, both exist in Z and Nightwood. They're about more than just death as a physical ending. They're about death as this constant process of transformation.
And that's the beauty of art, right? It gives us a safe space to explore these big questions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what do we hope listeners take away from this exploration of Freudian drive theory?
That we are complex creatures
Hmm.
with these hidden depths. And those hidden depths, those drives, they're not something to be afraid of. They're what make us human.
It's about recognizing those drives, those desires, those anxieties as part of who we are. And maybe, by understanding them a little better, we can start to understand ourselves and the world around us in a whole new light. So till next time, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and most importantly, keep those drives engaged.